In the next section, Homo Deus, in section entitled The Great Decoupling, what we find Harari talking about is if we look at the 20th century, the systems that we had, it was basically liberal humanism. And liberal humanism focuses on and advantages the idea of consciousness. All right, so what we're saying is that we look at the 21st century. Let's look at a chart of what we see happening. All right, and so in the number of talents that a particular sapien needs versus what happened over time, right? And so we had this early on, we had this great advantage for consciousness with the hunter-gatherer. But then with the farmer, we had a kind of a drop in the need for a number of talents. Cities, we dropped even further. And then in the age of computers, we dropped even further. So that all of a sudden, the advantage then fell to intelligence and no longer to consciousness. This is, again, one of our uh-ohs, because this specialization means that intelligence can be decoupled from consciousness. So we don't need to do everything. Take a taxi as an example. A driver is certainly more conscious than an automated car, but at the same time, if we just want to get from point A to point B, the automated car is actually safer and better. Okay, so then let's say what requires consciousness? I mean, one of the big areas we always thought about is a doctor. Well, he looks at that and says, well, let's look at the doctor. Like, compare your doctor to Google. I mean, Google has these biometric devices where it connects your genetic code and all the medical records to all the people of the world. It can actually have a watch that connects 24/7. I mean, there's things that happen like that. And then he talks about people that are needed. And we no longer need armies. We no longer need laborers. We have drones. We have robotic arms that do things for the skill part of laborers. We have computers that do knowledge work. So the knowledge work and the skill work, neither of them are necessary. So we talked about having, how we have algorithms, both sapiens and the animals. But the biggest issue here is that the inorganic world of the computers also has algorithms, and the organic is not actually advantaged over the inorganic. The inorganic is actually a little more advantaged. We've seen it where it wins in things like Jeopardy and chess. No longer is the organic ahead of the inorganic. We now have the inorganic is leading in those. We see it's interconnected. And it's a capability to handle a lot more data. We look at decisions. Who's going to make decisions? And Harari suggested in the future, we may use Google to make decisions like who to vote, marry, live, buy, what we like, all of these major decisions he sees happening that we may depend upon Google or at least talk to Google about them. So then if we look at this value pillar that we talked about, we're finding in the religion area, we're finding that what we see happening is algorithms are now falling, and we're saying that things like Google, Facebook, and Amazon are going to become and are becoming the areas that know us better than we know ourselves, and that's leading us to where we're now basically focused a lot on science. Then he says, let's look at the whole idea that also with masses and systems in that gap that they're still going to need elites. And I think there's an uh-oh there that I'm not sure that Harari addresses this that well, but it's kind of inherent in his thought. And that is that, if you look at the frame that sits around our institutions, and that frame is built upon the concept of humanism, right? And so what happens when that's decoupled, right? He talks about the military replaced by drones, but we may not even need a military. The whole idea of military may go away. Same thing with economics, the idea of Wall Street, and even the idea of owners. I mean, with skill and knowledge gone, why is necessarily owners also going to be around? And then with social, we have the loss of everything that's to do with hierarchy, and we may find relational things are what fuels our socialistic relationships. So that's kind of where we're going there.